I hopped aboard the Royal Navy's Sea King chopper at Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point near Morehead City, North Carolina. It took us about half an hour to reach the aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious. The chopper pilot flew us in a circle overhead so I could get a first look at the ship before we touched down on the deck. Before I explain why the U.S. Marines were on board, let me first tell you a bit about this fascinating British warship. The Illustrious, or Lusty as she's affectionately known by her crew, is one of Great Britain's 3 aircraft carriers, known as jump jet carriers because of the Harrier jump jets that are based on board. These 25,000-ton warships are just over 600 feet long, a little more than half as long as a U.S. Navy supercarrier, and only about a fourth as heavy. But the Illustrious and her sister ships take advantage of the Harrier's ability to take off in a very short space. What's more, since the Harrier has the unique ability to land vertically like a helicopter, the British light carriers don't need tailhooks and arresting cables like their American counterparts. It's both a strength and a weakness, as the ship's limited number of Harriers cannot fly as far as American fighters do without needing to refuel.
We have to place a lot of emphasis on flexibility and agility of being able to do lots of different things with the aircraft carrier. For example, we have a strike capability, but we also can be quickly re-rolled as a landing platform helicopter carrier for amphibious operations.
The Royal Navy has not always relied on light carriers like the Illustrious. They used to have several large-deck catapult-equipped carriers, but the end of World War II and the onset of the Cold War brought new priorities for the British military. I met with naval historian Nick Hewitt aboard the museum ship HMS Belfast on the Thames River in London to learn more.
At the end of the Second World War, the Royal Navy had a pretty enormous force of aircraft carriers. They had I think 8 fleet carriers, and I don't know the numbers for light fleet carriers, but there were probably 30 or so, plus the escort carriers. That shrank fairly rapidly after the war. Now that was about political and economic reality, and also, on a slightly less negative note, a consequence of the NATO alliance. So they shifted to a navy that was almost entirely orientated around hunting Russian submarines.
It was a decision the Royal Navy would come to regret during the Falklands conflict in the 1980s, when the little Harrier carriers were almost outmatched by the Argentine Air Force. But the jump jet ships performed well and are still the backbone of Britain's surface fleet. One of the carrier's strengths is concealed below decks.
Coming up. 118 starboard.
Up inside, want to keep it SCC.
4 marinized versions of the same turbines that powered the supersonic Concorde jets push the Lusty through the waves. They allow her to reverse course and change speed quickly.
The engines are quite quick to react and can get us up to speed pretty quickly.
Next stop, rest stop.
I witnessed the nimble engines in action when the ship underwent a RAST, or replenishment at sea, during my time aboard ship.
Revolutions 908, pass and repeat, so good.
The maneuver required the crew to bring the Illustrious alongside a supply ship, matching speed and direction as the 2 crews shot lines between the vessels and moved supplies and fuel back and forth.
Steering 182, sir.
Very good.
Confirm 60 miles to the west.
It is at 1700. That's going to be for 2 hours.
When I flew aboard the Illustrious in July of 2007, the ship was making history, playing host to more than 200 U.S. Marines and their Harrier jump jets. It's a rare opportunity for American pilots to train in a challenging foreign environment alongside important allies in the global war on terrorism. What you're seeing behind me is history in the making. As far as anybody in the Marine Corps or the Royal Navy remembers, this is the first time an American squadron has actually operated, lived aboard, and worked aboard a foreign aircraft carrier.
You know, some people will point to this as a first. Quite frankly, I think this is a clear case of preparation meeting opportunity.
I sat down with Lieutenant Colonel Eric Van Camp, who commanded the Marines aboard Illustrious, to understand why the U.S. and U.K. militaries thought this opportunity was worth the expense and the effort.
We're simply demonstrating that quite frankly, the things that we've touted about the Harrier for years and years and years and years and years on both sides of the Atlantic, okay, are in fact true, and we're demonstrating that. So it's no longer a PowerPoint slide or a slick, glossy brief, okay. We said we could do it, we're doing it. Okay, so what's the next step and what are the implications from this?
The Marines brought 14 of their Harriers on board for the exercise, in which the Illustrious went up against the American carriers Truman and Eisenhower in massive naval war games. It was a challenge from the top down, as the Marines and Royal Navy sailors struggled to work together in challenging conditions under a tight deadline.
First time ever being able to go aboard a British vessel and be able to work side by side with them.
I've been really surprised at how smoothly things have gone. Considering two different nations, you know, a definite language barrier, and then procedures barriers as well between the two different countries. But they've been very accommodating. They've come our way, and we've made some exceptions as well. And it's just been a great experience all around.
But the real value of this experience lies in the promise it holds for future cooperation between the American Marines and their British counterparts.
This definitely is a good tool to put in our toolbox for the future. This exercise is really good, so if we need to do that, if that's what the future calls for, then we're ready to meet it.
This experience will permeate the Harrier force in the United States Marine Corps, because the population of people who are involved in this will remember, okay, and understand what it is that we did, why we did it, and what it means to the future.